The Shona people are one of the largest nations in southern Africa, primarily inhabiting Zimbabwe and some neighboring regions such as Malawi and Mozambique. In this video, we will learn about the origins of the Shona people and how they arose from oppression and became one of the most resilient and respected nations in southern Africa. The name Shona is of recent origin and was applied to all Shona-speaking people after the British colonized Zimbabwe. It's just like the Nguni cluster. Under the Nguni people, we find ethnicities like the Xhosa, Luandwe, Zulu, Mpondo, Hlubi, Ndebele, etc. And under the Shona cluster, we find dialects or tribes like the Zezuru, Karanga, Manyika, Korekore, and the Buja. But this topic of the subdivision of the so-called Shona people can be a bit controversial and might spike tribalism, so I'll just stick to using the term Shona. The most widely spoken Shona dialects are Karanga and Zezuru, while Manyika is spoken in Manicaland and Eastern region. Korekore is spoken in the Northern region. Karanga is spoken in the Masvingo province, and Zezuru is spoken in Mashonaland. When learning about the rich culture of the Shona people, one of the most fascinating elements is their traditional music. At the heart of this musical tradition is the legendary Mbira, a unique instrument that has been played for centuries. The Mbira is made out of carefully crafted metal reeds attached to a wooden sounding board, often placed inside a large card that acts as a resonator to amplify its sound. Musicians pluck the metal keys using their thumbs and fingers, producing a beautiful, hypnotic tone. To learn about who you are as a Bantu is to accept that there was an origin and our ancestors moved from somewhere. Like all Bantu tribes, we have oral history that states that we migrated from the Great Lakes or the northern region of Africa, but there's more truth to that. The earliest settlements of the Shona people in Zimbabwe was around the 1st centuries. As I am a person in the truth regarding our origins as the Bantu people, your language says a lot about your origins. To most people, this information will sound like a fabricated lie. So, before I continue, let's reclaim land that belongs to Africa that the mainstream media divided physically and geographically through the creation of the Suez Canal and the use of false theology. So, by them removing that piece of land from Africa, it means they are trying to hide an identity of a people. Israel, or the Middle East, rests on the African tectonic plate. It's considered to be Northeast Africa. To my Bantu people, before Congo, there was Northeast Africa. Our origins as Bantu people can be traced back to biblical times. From Genesis to Revelation, the Bible always spoke about black Hebrews. We always had the Bible. It was never white. Every race has their origins in the Bible, like the Cushites. They descend from Cush. Cush was the grandson of Noah, which makes Noah black. Nimrod was the son of Cush, which means Nimrod was also black. Noah had black children because Noah was black. White people cannot create black people because they are genetically recessive, and black people can create every race because black people are genetically dominant. So, who are the Bantu and where do the Bantu people originate from during the biblical times? It is crucial for you to understand that there is a huge genetic, anthropological, and cultural difference between the Bantu, the Cushite, and the Nilotic peoples. Snapshots from Sunny Africa by Helen E. Springer. Many writers and explorers have optioned that the Bantu are of Shemitic rather than Hamitic stock. Let's look at the term Negro. Though the word was used to degrade a people, the connotation behind it was bad. But it's a word with many derivatives, and it can be traced back to an ancient people. According to this dictionary, the meaning of the Negro, one of a dark-skinned race having woolly hair, flat nose, thick protruding lips, and a prognathous form of a skull, native to Africa, where the term Negro applies most specifically to the Bantu stock of the South and the people of Central and West areas near the Gulf of Guinea. Let's take a look at what Bantu means. A member of a Negroid people who occupy Equatorial and Southern Africa. And again, The Zondervan Bible Dictionary says the same thing about who the Hamitic people are and who the Negroid people are. According to the Zondervan Bible Dictionary, Ham became the progenitor of the darker races, but not the Negro, but the Egyptians, Ethiopians, Libyans, and the Canaanites. By going through that passage alone, it means Bantus or Negroes are a Shemitic people. And through Shem, we had Abraham, Isaac had Jacob, and Jacob had his 12 sons. And again, my good friends, we always had the Bible. It was just never white. Well, let's go deeper. So, what really happened to the 10 tribes of the Bible? Their exile parallels exactly with the migration of the Bantu into Equatorial and the eastern region of Africa. The northern kingdom of Israel was taken to exile by the Assyrians in the 8th century BCE. In the book of 2 Kings, chapter 18, verse 11 to 12, the king of Assyria deported Israel to Assyria and settled them in Hala, in Kazan, on the Harbor River, and in the towns of the Medes. The exile of the northern kingdom happened about 2,700 years ago, and that corresponds exactly with the oral history regarding the Bantu migration. Nothing is yet known with certainty of the origin of the Bantu. It is quite certain that they have been in Africa for at least 2,000 years, and it seems evident that their migration over the continent was not extensive prior to 2,000 years ago. It is probable that they came to Africa as early as 3,000 years ago. The ruins testify to that. The traces of Semitic blood in the Makaranga people are a Shona people. Wherever you migrated from, you adopt the tongue that was spoken in that region. Let's trace the origins of the Shona using their language. In East Bantu, along the coast, there is a strong Semitic element, principally due to Arabian influence. In Mashona, there is another Semitic element, which is, however, of far older origin and must without the slightest doubt be referred to Assyrian. There is, however, another and older Semitic element in some Bantu languages, which cannot be referred to Arabic and which I am convinced is of Assyrian origin. The most striking instance of this is found in the Shona languages, spoken by Mashonas as they call themselves Makalanga. There is, besides apparently direct connection between many words in Shona and Assyrian, a good deal more evidence of Assyrian influence upon the Bantu, especially in the branch of Bantu we call Botswana. In the other southern Bantu tribes, there are undoubtedly several words connected with Assyrian. Zulu, Baba, to burn, seems to agree with Assyrian, Kababu, to burn. But there are two words in southern Bantu which are without the slightest doubt of Sumerian and Assyrian origin. I have already shown that on account of the ancient Babylonian and Sumerian elements in some of the Bantu dialects, the invasion must have come from the mouths of Tigris and Euphrates. The Bantu invasion of Africa started from the mouths of Tigris and Euphrates and probably took place about the year 680 BC. As I said, wherever you migrated from, you adopt the language or the tongue spoken in that region. And it is also quoted that the Bantu originate from the mouths of Tigris and Euphrates, the very same region the 10 lost tribes of the Bible were exiled to. The Assyrian Empire ruled the heart of Mesopotamia and the land between the Tigris and the Euphrates River. For example, if we go to the book of Isaiah, chapter 7, verse 20, in the same day shall the Lord shave with a razor that is hired, namely by them beyond the river, by the king of Assyria. Here, beyond the river refers to the region of the Euphrates, showing Assyria ruled territories around it. As the Bantu people, our origins and ancestors is no secret. For instance, Isaac was named after laughter. Genesis 21 verse 6. And Sarah said, God hath made me to laugh, so that all that hear will laugh with me. So, how do we say laughter in Bantu languages? Well, in Hebrew, it's Yishak. Se, kuseka, kuseka, or kuseka.
Tshega, seka, ukutsheka, sak, tseka, seha, seya, kuseka, utseha, ukuseka, seka, ukuhleka, seka.
This brings us to the end of the video, and thank you for watching. I am bantubison. Mazimba, Mimi, Shona, you didn't even subscribe to my channel. What is wrong with you guys? But really, you really think I would end this video without talking about one of the greatest achievements in African history? An achievement the Western mindset tried to bury. Yes, I'm talking about the great Zimbabwe. For many years, colonial historians tried to claim that Africans or Bantus could not have built such an advanced city. They created theories saying that it must have been built by foreigners. But the truth is clear today. The builders were the ancestors of the Shona people. Between the 11th and the 15th centuries, Shona builders constructed massive walls, and they created a powerful trading kingdom and controlled trade routes that connected southern Africa to the Indian Ocean. Associated with an exaggerated belief in the primitive nature of the African past is the belief of many whites that Great Zimbabwe could not have been built by Africans. Whites saw as a threat to their position that the idea of the primitive Bantu were capable without outside help of those political organizations and material skills more sophisticated than those that the 19th century settlers found or chose to find. The privileged position of the whites was justified by the belief that only with their help could the native Bantu do anything constructive. In fact, all professional archaeologists who have worked on the site are agreed that the Zimbabwe ruins are of Bantu origin. In southern Africa, there are at least 600 stone-built ruins in the regions of Zimbabwe, Mozambique, and South Africa. These ruins show today an extraordinary cultural past. Most of them are said to date from the Middle Ages, but some authorities give much earlier dates for their construction. These structures are called Mazimbabwe in Shona, the Bantu language of the builders, and means great house of stone. João de Barros, a Portuguese writer of the mid-16th century, tells us Zimbabwe, more correctly Zimbabwe. The Great Zimbabwe was the largest of these ruins. It consisted of 12 clusters of buildings spread over 3 square miles. In the 14th century, the city of the Great Zimbabwe housed about 18,000 people. Its industries included 4,000 gold mines, iron smelting, copper and bronze manufacture, and an ivory trade with the Swahili on the East African coast. Among the products imported were stoneware and green glazed dishes from China, colored glass from the Near East, and glazed and painted bowls from Persia. Equally out of touch with the nature and character of the Bantu, with their life habits, their infantile craftsmanship, an advanced type of civilization and industry, uninspired by foreign urge or model, unguided by any external aid, was suddenly created by a tribe of savages, and without any preliminary stages, spontaneously blazed forth into immediate maturity, and then without any catastrophe or political change befalling them, has suddenly ceased to function, no longer able to continue or repeat their past achievements or to tell us whence it came. The Bantu, it was, they say, who built the Zimbabweans. After the decline of the Great Zimbabwe, many dynasties rose like the Mutapa Empire, the Torah dynasty, and the Rosary Empire. In the late 19th century, the land we now call Zimbabwe became the target of British imperial ambition. Under the control of British South Africa Company, settlers and soldiers pushed into Shona and Ndebele territories. The Ndebele, known for their military strength, initially resisted but were overwhelmed by modern weaponry during the First Matebele War. Not long after, both the Ndebele and Shona people rose together in a powerful and coordinated uprising known as the First Chimurenga. This was not just a war, it was a spiritual and cultural resistance against colonial domination. At the heart of this rebellion stood the powerful Mbira Nehanda, who inspired her people to fight for their land, their identity, and their freedom. The Bantus of Zimbabwe arose against colonial injustice, guided not by only their courage but by powerful spiritual leaders who reminded them, Mafuma angu achamuka, my bones shall rise. That prophecy came from Mbira Nehanda. When colonial authorities disrupted the people's way of life, Mbira Nehanda called for resistance. Her leadership was both political and spiritual, reminding her people that freedom was sacred. Another spiritual leader that guided the Bantus in Zimbabwe was Sekuru Kugavi. He worked in hand with Mbira Nehanda, rallying the people to fight against oppression. He preached unity among clans, declaring that the battle was not only for the land, but for the soul of the Shona nations. The colonial forces crushed the uprising with brutal efficiency. Thousands were killed. Mbira Nehanda and Sekuru Kugavi were executed in 1898, but not silenced. This chapter of history is not just about invasion and defeat, but resilience, resistance, and an unbreakable spirit of a people who refused to be conquered. In the 1960s, Zimbabwe, then called Rhodesia, was under white minority rule led by Ian Smith. The system heavily favored white settlers and oppressed the African majority. Fertile lands were taken by farmers and the Bantus were pushed into overcrowded reserves. Like apartheid, segregation was common. There were separate schools, hospitals, and public facilities. Africans received far poorer services. By the 1960s and 70s, African nationalist movements began to rise. Two powerful forces emerged: Zanla, aligned by Robert Mugabe, Zipra, led by Joshua Nkomo. Together, they launched a fierce liberation struggle known as the Rhodesian Bush War. This was not a conventional war, it was a guerrilla war. After years of bloodshed, the pressure became too great. In 1979, negotiations in London led to the Lancaster House Agreement. This agreement ended the war. And on the 18th of April, 1980, a new nation was born, Zimbabwe. Robert Mugabe became the first prime minister, marking the end of white minority rule. But independence did not solve everything. Much of the best farmland was still owned by white settlers, and on the other side, black Zimbabweans remained largely landless. At first, land reform was slow and peaceful, but by the late 1990s, everything changed. The government launched the Fast Track Land Reform Program. White-owned farms were taken and redistributed. For many black Zimbabweans, this was justice, the reclaiming of stolen land.
The US couldn't win with guns, so instead they starved the nation. When Zimbabwe took back its land, the world's most powerful countries hit back, but without firing a single bullet. The US called Zimbabwe an extraordinary threat. It wasn't because of weapons or armies, but because it dared to reclaim what was stolen. The economic war started quietly, but escalated quickly. In 2002, the EU froze Zimbabwe's assets and banned its leaders from traveling. The next year, President Bush declared a national emergency, using the same laws meant for wartime threats. The plan was simple: suffocate the economy. Hospitals couldn't import spare parts, farmers couldn't get fertilizer, and the country was blocked from loans, even for clean water systems. As hunger spread and diseases like cholera broke out, Western media just mocked Zimbabwe's trillion-dollar bills, calling it mismanagement, while ignoring the real cause, which were sanctions designed to break the nation. But just
The West weren't happy about seeing black people take back what was stolen. They saw it as a threat, so they intentionally destroyed the economy of Zimbabwe. If you refuse to be ruled, your community will be destabilized. That's the very same thing African Americans went through in the 1980s and the 1990s when the Black Panthers started to come in power. Well, a white powder was introduced in the black community to destabilize the black people. But on the African soil, it was a biochemical warfare, HIV, was introduced, cholera, malaria, and Ebola was genetically engineered to destroy the black communities. The Bantus in South Africa got a taste of this persecution. So ask yourself, why is it that we are so persecuted as a people? They know our true identity. Between 2000 and 2008, Zimbabwe went through one of the worst economic and humanitarian crises in its history, which led to widespread hunger and near-famine conditions. It wasn't a single event, but a combination of political, economic, and environmental factors. But above all these persecutions, the Bantus of Zimbabwe survived. Whenever they felt pain, they kneeled and prayed upon Mwari, the God of the Bible, the Ancient of Days. The modern livelihood of the Shona people in Zimbabwe has shown notable improvement in recent years. The country has experienced significant economic growth, emerging as one of the fastest growing economies in Southern Africa. The progress has been accompanied by a gradual return of the members of the Shona diaspora, particularly from the United Kingdom and South Africa. Many are coming back with valuable skills, capital, and international experience, contributing meaningfully to national development. A strong focus has been placed on revitalizing agriculture and promoting social development initiatives. These efforts are not only strengthening local communities but also fostering sustainable economic growth and long-term stability within the country. We are Bantu. We survive. Share this video with your Shona friend. And please, don't forget to subscribe. And thank you so much for watching. I am bantubison. Inkosi yamashangane. Ondwandwe. Habase kutungoma.
I know that the government, whatever, can't stand us black people. He's doing everything in the world to make black man be extinct. But I'm going to tell you one thing, us black people going to survive. So fuck everybody. I'm off.